It's a very precious time that we have this morning to explore what does the future of media look like? What does the future of the church look like? And how can we work together to transform society? I come from the beautiful city of Cape Town. Those who've been in Cape Town, they might recognize the backdrop here. These are some of the mountains down from Cape Town. I grew up there many years ago, and one day I was tuning into a radio program. I've got no idea who the broadcaster was. I listened for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I never ever listened again. But these few minutes changed my life. I heard a few people talking about how the big media ministries of the day, that was TWR, FIBA, A2JB, and a few others, decided in 1985 they were going to collaborate to reach the world together for Christ using the media. At that stage, I'd been a Christian for about 8 years, and I thought, if God provides us with the technology to be able to complete the Great Commission, reaching everybody through these communication channels, then one day I want to be part of that. Now, it's been a long journey. I met a lovely young lady who also had a passion to be involved in media. We got married, and now we've been with TWR since 1999. And I'm now working on helping us understand how do we move into the future to make impact in communities. We'll be covering a lot of ground this morning. So I want to take us on the journey slowly so it doesn't feel like we're sitting in a racing car or like a jet shooting through. And I hope that we can pick up a number of key points that will help us as we explore the future and as we navigate our way through that. After the input that I will be giving, where I'm helping us understand how we look into the future, how we explore the whole system, and how we bring all of that together, then Finny will come in and share some examples from what he's experienced in the South Asia context, and he'll bring some more perspectives into how all this collaboration between media and ministry could be working up ahead. So please join me on this journey as we move ahead and look into the future. Now, the first thing I'd like you to do while you're watching this presentation is to actually close your eyes. And for the next 30 or seconds or so, I'd like you to visualize the 23rd of May, 2033. That day I will have been on pension for about 2 months, so I'll be sitting on my veranda. But just imagine that day, the 23rd of May, 2033. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What are you sensing? What are you experiencing on that particular day in May in relation to media? Just reflect on that. Let it go through your mind. Let your body be immersed in that day. How does the media shape your life? Now, Albert Einstein gave a really interesting quote where he says, growth comes through analogy, through seeing how things are connected rather than only seeing how they might be different. When we explore the future, we do a lot through analogy. When Albert Einstein actually explored the whole relativity theory, he worked a huge amount with analogy. He actually talked through the whole theory in pictures with his friends and explored what could it look like. So also as we explore the future, we use a lot of analogy to try and understand what could it be, what could it look like, what could the experience be like when we are in that future. So thanks so much also for the images that you portrayed about what media in 2033 could look like. We want to be just taking some steps of showing what would it look like to actually go a path of intentionally exploring the future of media and the world around us. Why do we do future thinking? Why is it really so helpful? There are a number of facets of studying the future that are really helpful for organizations and also for individual lives. And these features very much match up with the needs that normally exist in organizations. Now, these benefits of studying the future are very much about helping us to become orientated for the future so that we are ready when things come. Also, these future studies help us to be very intentional about mapping out what the future could look like. In other words, being systematic about studying all these different facets. Now, from the comments we heard just now, we heard various terms like virtual reality, about artificial intelligence, and each of these are highly specialized areas where there's a lot of information, and we may want to think deeply about that and understand the whole context of each of these areas. Then thirdly, what the future studies helps is that it helps us to be creative, that we look at what is the default in what is happening, and it inspires and challenges us to think beyond the existing thinking frames, to think outside the box, and to consider what huge challenges could be coming along that might threaten us, or what could be totally different ways of doing something that we haven't thought of before. Now, that is a lot easier when you've already mapped out the landscape and you see what is out there, what is happening, what might be happening. And then lastly, the future studies help us a lot to deal with change. Many of us complain there's too much change happening. Future thinking helps us on the one side to anticipate change, on the other to navigate through the change, and for us as Christians, most importantly, to also facilitate change. Some years ago, I participated in a media conference down in Durban in South Africa. And the one evening I was sitting out in the veranda and just reflecting on what was going on in the conference and all these presentations we had. And there was like the ocean down below, and these huge floodlights from the hotel were shining around on the veranda of the hotel. And suddenly there was this boom, and the lights were just off. Everything was dark. And all of a sudden I noticed that there were these few bright stars I'd seen up in the sky. They were suddenly filled with all these other little faint stars around them. And I realized suddenly when this bright light is away, I'm able to see all the little detail, and realizing, oh, all these little dots, they're actually like a whole cloud of stars all together. They're actually connected, and I'm seeing the relationships in between there. And I realized, isn't that so much with our society, with our media? There's such noise, or let's say bright lights around us with everything that's going on, that it's difficult for us to see those faint connections and to see the details of what is actually out there and what is important for the way ahead. Now, some people are describing future studies like a science because it's very systematic and it's very intentional. Others describe future thinking more as an art because it's really creative and it thinks beyond just the rational. So as we move ahead and want to understand where is society moving, where is technology going, where are all the other things around us moving, it's very helpful to bring in this balance of, on the one side, thinking very intentionally and analytically about what we are looking for, but also really bringing the emotions in and our feelings of where does this as human being actually take us. It was so good to hear in some of the responses from Envisioning 2033 that yes, there was some very clear rational thoughts of what it could look like. There were some strong emotions that came out, even fear or even joy of what it could look like. Bringing both of these together is really helpful. Now, as we move and navigate into the future, there are a whole lot of terms around. This is just a word map of all these terms that I had put together in a certain document. where I sort of put all the thoughts and concepts together in one place that really seemed important to me about planning ahead. In our context, the media is crucial as well as the ministry. We really have those two. But a key aspect is that we're doing all of this to impact the lives of people. Now, for us to be able to do that well, understanding the future can be really helpful. Exploring the trends, then also looking at the environment, and then using all sorts of strategies, exploring issues, and looking at the impact. Now, as we're navigating through all these different terms here, there are two main areas that we'll be grappling with this morning. The one is this whole idea of strategic foresight, of being systematic and intentional in exploring the future so that we anticipate what's happening. And the other side, using systems thinking, of looking at all the elements in our ministry, in our media, in our context, and looking at the relationships between them and how the one is influencing the other and shaping the other. So both the strategic foresight, looking ahead, and the systems thinking of looking at the whole environment are really helpful to bring together to look at the context in which we find ourselves as media communicators. As we think ahead, there are different ways of seeing the future. This is a map that has been put together by Joseph Voros many years ago. It's been very helpful to understand what does this cone of the future look like. So if we are at the present over there on the far left and moving out here, then the middle path here, this blue one, is what we call the projected future. If everything carries on as is, then we've got a pretty good idea what it will look like in 17 years' time. Then just out of this, we've got a slightly bigger field which we call the probable future. So if we look at the current trends, at the way the economy is going, the environment, the social context, technology, then if that just carries on, most likely it will end up in that future. But we know very well from experience that these trends often change dramatically. So then we come to this area here, which is the plausible future, which means, according to current knowledge, this could happen. Not according to the trends. The trends would need to switch significantly, but it's quite plausible that that could happen in 20, 30 years' time. Then we go a bit further out, and we call that the possible future. According to our knowledge, this might happen, but we need to stretch the trends tremendously. It needs to be very different from today. And then we come to the one on the red, which we call preposterous. It's impossible. Some futurists have said, if there's any valuable comment of the future, at first it needs to sound absolutely ridiculous. And if we look at the prophets, some of what Tony talked about, a lot what the prophets talked about, I think was in the absolute impossible. It sounded absolutely ridiculous. Even with Moses being told, take my people, go. Millions of slaves walking out of captivity. It's completely in that area. I've got a feeling this is one of God's specialities, to work in those areas. Now, out of that zone, those will be things that just won't happen. And so that is very difficult, not really worthwhile to explore. But now, as future thinking media practitioners, what is really helpful for us to define is not just what is possible, but what is preferable. There may be a lot of things up here which could look very interesting, but is not preferable to us. And so, knowing what is this area here that we would like to see happening, it brings us to a point where we can, on the one side, be able to respond which way our path in the future moves, in terms of our personal lives, in terms of our organizational strategies or our country. But also, it could help us to even nudge the path into the future, into a certain direction. This is a framework which can just guide us in terms of our thinking of these various options of navigating into the future. We now want to be taking just a look backwards. When our ancestors used to sit around the fireplace, they told each other stories. Even some of us still enjoy sitting around the fireplace and listening to each other's stories. As we move into the future, looking back at a few thousand years, what is it that is really important around media that would carry on into the future? In all the reading I've done, in asking experts, people who understand strategy, thinking ahead, who understand the Bible, we're coming back again and again to the point that all we need is a good story. The Bible is full of these stories. Our lives, how God has been working in our lives, is also full of good stories. The challenge for us as media practitioners is to find how can we communicate these stories well to a world that is changing dramatically, and a media that is going to be very different to what we've seen in the past. So as we look back from the past and realize there are some priorities to move into the future, we also want to be looking at what is going on right now. So the first point to do is to actually begin exploring what are the driving forces and trends in our context. Now, exploring these driving forces and trends is very helpful to get a systematic understanding of the world around us. This means that we may want to be intentional about getting certain type of information and even helping each other gathering that information so that we can actually store all this insight in a place that helps us together have a good insight in what is happening with all these trends. If we have a place where we can not only capture the information, but we can analyze it and store it and even retrieve it, that becomes a great resource as a knowledge stewardship to be able to capture and retrieve the information to guide us in terms of our media strategies and our interaction with the church and impacting our societies. Now, what could be driving forces in our present context? There are lots of things that are pushing and pulling in our society. There are a few points that could really be considered as drivers in many facets of life. The one that we've really seen over recent decades is that people are yearning for a better life. And they are doing everything in their power to be able to enjoy a higher standard of living. And that plays itself out in many, many facets of our society. Part of that is also in growing individualism. We're feeling that tremendously in Africa, which has often been a lot more communal atmosphere. And now people are switching over to this individualistic orientation in life. And also this desire that I want to be in control of my future. Another real driver we experience in the whole media space is that people are becoming permanently connected. And this has got a lot of consequences and a lot of trends flowing out of that. There are many more drivers that shape our society. And in this session, I really don't want to give a complete overview of what such drivers are, but just stimulate us to actually grapple with what are the drivers and the most important drivers in our context, in our organization. So these drivers actually push the trends in certain directions. Many people here in Europe are already living in cities. In the continent of Africa, we still have a lot of people staying in the countryside. but they are flocking to the cities. This trend is driven by some of the drivers up above, by people wanting a better life, but also other drivers. And these trends have got huge implications for societies. Then we also have this trend of people becoming more globalized in their thinking and their action, from the economy to the arts to many other areas. People are becoming a lot more mediatized. There's media influencing their lives on all sorts of levels. And then there's also this whole trend of the climate change having more and more impact, from agriculture to health to even, lots of other places in relationships. Now, as we move ahead, we might want to look at how do these driving forces really shape the trends. There are so many influences that shape the changes what we see happening. And where we really benefit is where we begin looking at the data, looking at the information around us, and actually exploring how do these different forces, how do these trends shape what we see happening. By getting a deeper understanding of this, we can actually start making strategies and initiatives that address the changes we are seeing around us. Now, where these trends come in is when we understand the deeper forces that are behind that, we can begin shaping our media initiatives to address these forces instead of just looking at the consequences which we see in the people around us. Now, people have been asking what is really important, and one question that has cropped up is the whole question, as we move ahead, how do families make use of media? When we look at families, we see many facets of society coming together, and we see the family having input into lots of consequences that we see around us, from relationships to education to generational information being passed on. And so, as we explore the family in the context of all these forces and trends, we can be very strong and very informed about how we shape our media strategies. Let me take us quickly through these graphs, which we call hypercycles. When a new technology comes along, if you look on the bottom graph, you normally have the blue people, the innovators that begin using a technology, then the early adopters, and then most people start using it, and eventually you've got the late majority and the laggards over here. When you look at the technology itself, it starts off that the technology shoots up with high expectations. But then later these expectations are so huge that eventually it just crashes down and people become very disillusioned. We all thought the smartphone would solve all the problems of our life, until you had all your data lost in this trough of disillusionment. And only when you begin seeing the practical value of the technology, then the slope increases and it becomes more stable. And it's often at this stage, only much later on, where organizations will be able to make a profit or really have impact through these technologies. Now, people have been plotting various technologies along this graph, and they normally flow along this graph over time. This is July 2014, and I've just highlighted 3 areas that are very relevant to our media context. The one on the far right here is virtual reality. It has not infiltrated everybody's life, but it's become possible to relate to that in many regions. Then on the way down is augmented reality. We had the whole Pokemon craze, and we thought, wow, this is the next thing. Now where's the next thing? It's just become a non-event. We don't have the next version of that augmented reality become useful yet. Then on the far left, there's another circle about volumetric or holographic displays. three-dimensional displays. Even in front here, we've only got a two-dimensional display. We haven't got a three-dimensional display here yet, neither on our phones, not really around us. It's still very much on the verge up. Now just remember the position of those three circles and compare to this graph. July 2016. Virtual reality has moved from here a little bit up here. Augmented reality was right up here, has dropped all the way down. We're a lot more dissatisfied with what this could deliver. But look at the volumetric displays. They were down here. They've already moved up significantly. This is just over 2 years. And you see that there have been significant changes happening in some technology that is highly relevant for us as media specialists. You might say, in our work, augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D displays are non-issues. If you look at these little symbols here, the little yellow triangle says in more than 10 years, the blue one says 5 to 10 years. I'm not talking of 2033, we're talking of 2025, in 7 to 10 years, where some of these technologies could become usable tools in our ministry. As we explore these different technologies, the question for us is, how can we be ready when the technology is there to be able to have the impact in reaching people's lives through these communication tools that we should be having? As we explore these trends, we can see what could be happening. But then we also need to look at alternative scenarios. We need to look beyond the normal, beyond the default future. The way futurists do that is they look at not the normal events or the completely ridiculous events. They look at which futures are coming up ahead that have got a high degree of uncertainty, where I don't know, will this happen, will this not happen? And then looking at a number of these factors that are highly uncertain, they develop various alternative scenarios. For example, will people be using smartphones to communicate their whole life to the whole world? Or will they rather have a very personalized life where they don't share anything? That's just one dimension. And by mapping these various dimensions across each other, one starts seeing different types of scenarios coming out, and they can be different options of what the future can look like. Sometimes countries, even the whole country of Kenya, who's done scenarios like this, realized they've actually navigated through a number of scenarios moving into the future. And it's really helped them to appreciate and understand what's going on and seeing how could they navigate towards a different space. Now, once these different scenarios are mapped out, it's really helpful to define where do we actually want to get to. We've got the advantage, we've got this wonderful book, the Bible, which gives us a lot of principles of what type of scenario God would like us to move into. Now, that provides us with lots of inspiring pictures, but also helps us to nurture certain visions of the future that we can promote and then we can work towards. Just by the way, I took this photograph while we were on holiday with some friends, and this is my friend's set of glasses lying there. He's very short-sighted, and so I put the glass on there and took this photograph. Then he zapped out his camera, also wanted to take the picture, but then he realized he can't take the picture because he can't see anything because his glasses are lying on the table. But these glasses just help us show we want to be looking into the future. Some things we cannot see at all. They're hazy like on the side here. But sometimes a certain type of lens helps us to see a lot more distinctly about what is up in the distance that's coming towards us. As we have a more compelling, concrete idea of what could the vision be like as we move into the future, It helps us to craft an intentional journey of moving into the future. This was actually somebody who drove along on a truck close to where we stay, and I think one of the big pots of red paint had fallen over, so he left this trail of red paint all along the road. We need a red line like that in our lives, in our organizations, in our networks to guide us into the future. And these lines can guide us so that we don't just keep on going in our default mode, but we actually move towards a future that we are longing for, that God is pulling us towards, so that we can have the impact that we want to be having. In this session, we're really bringing three areas together. The church, which is God's body here on earth, which is the media, the area where we are really specialists in, and then also the context of the people where we are living. So we want to be asking the questions as we explore the future. How do we understand the changing role of the church, where the church has been going out doing mission work, and now we have the church going from everywhere to everywhere? A very different dynamic 200 years ago. Then we also want to look at the future of media, as many mass media platforms, as we heard from Christian Vision the other day, have changed from being these big broadcasting platforms to being media that is highly interactive, available everywhere. And then we also really want to see the future of societies, where the power in society is not just with one leader anymore, but power is being placed into the hands of people. Individual teenagers who can take a video and they impact millions of people's lives. And so we want to bring that together. So as we look over time, we want to be informed by the past of how have our experiences shaped us and molded us. And then to take the relationships we have today and ask, how can that be influencing the future? And with that, taking our future images and visions that we have and bringing them back to today and say, how are our visions, our desires for the future shaping us in what we are involving ourselves today? So as we move ahead, we will be very wise to use systems that take a wide perspective, that we look at where are the key areas where we can start making changes, and in that way seeing a multiplying effect and wide influence in the context in which we find ourselves. We've been seeing much transformation in media, much changes in the world around us. And the challenge for us is, again and again, to identify where are the places in society where we can make a unique impact with media so that it has a ripple effect and goes much wider than what we might originally have been doing. I would encourage us to work together to solve this dramatic challenge of the media. This is a wooden puzzle that's got these 6 pieces that are interlocked to each other. And as a family, we haven't been able to solve this yet. Everybody tries to pull the pieces apart. We can't get it apart, and we can't really get it together. So if you ever come to visit us, you can try and solve this for us. The media for us is a huge puzzle, but it's a puzzle that's solvable, because much of the information we can find, we can explore, and many relationships around us we can nurture, we can build, so that we can actually impact God's kingdom together, using the media, bringing together the church, and looking at how can we communicate to shape the world of tomorrow. I just want to point us to these resources here. There are 3 books which are really helpful. There are many, many more. But these ones I find are particular help. The one is this one here called Future Thinking by Andy Hines and Peter Bishop, which is a framework to guide through how you as an individual organization can actually explore the future. The second one is by a UK futurist, Patrick Dixon, called Future Wise, who looks at 6 specific major global trends that affect our lives and that are highly relevant to ministry, particularly also to media ministry. And then this amazing book by Patrick Johnson, The Future of the Global Church, where he's taken all this information that he's had in Operation World and put that together in a very appealing graphic way. At the book launch in Pretoria he did some years ago, he said he hopes his predictions and they will be wrong, because he looked at the default trends, the expected future, and realized the state of the world and the church will not really change much. So he challenges Christians to do something so the future will look different to the anticipated future in there. There may be some more questions. Our session's not done yet. I would like us to just move over to Finny. He's got some very important and valuable insight to share with us. And then after that, we have some more time to interact and share and ask questions and grapple with these issues. And there's some more sessions later on where we can continue the conversation.
I just want to present myself as a missionary, challenging you to be more global focused and mission engaged group of people. Thank you, Lars, for reminding the inside story of what has happened in Los Angeles. If you sleep, no problem. But at the end, when I give the altar call, say, "Here I am, Lord." I will go. I'm just trying to bring a global perspective from which we need to take certain things very seriously. 3 things I would like to share. One is, in the global south, mobile phones are getting very strategic. These are strategic tool now. But the church has not grown to what is happening with that. Second thing I would like to look at is, what is the nature of relationship in our civilization now as networked civilization? And where do we move and live, and how can we engage with those networked civilizations? And thirdly, maybe one area which we need to really take it seriously for collaborating ourselves, not creating silos of media ministries, rather coming together and do something. So this is the simplest way I just want to present what is in my heart. We all know this. The things of communication in the past has been books to bytes. I remember the time when we used to get a sack of videos from US as a discipleship material to be given to our pastors. And we have gone through that, cassette ministries and all kinds of things. But now that is changed and the shift has happened. We know this. But what's now happening is that phenomenal growth of mobile phones in the majority world. And this is a kind of statistics in 2006, 2.7 billion, but now there are many information on the net, and I think 5.6 billion, or I don't know whether it's 7.4 billion. Maybe Dual Swims can count to that, whether that mobile phone subscriptions. As 4 out of every 5 mobile connections are in the global south. I'll tell you the story. So it has become the most strategic device that helps us. I just want to tell you an Indian example. A big business group, Reliance, Jio is a new mobile network that they have started in September last year. In 170 days, they could get 100 million users and subscribers. What they did is they offered free connections for 6 months and allowing the users to download as many data as possible. The majority of data were movies and videos being downloaded, and India has moved from 150 in terms of data use to now number 1 in the world. So you can see those details, but again we are talking about a country where 1/3 of Indians don't have a toilet, but half the population has mobile phones. But the worrying thing is, if you watch or read or analyze the Indian news and the things that are happening within the society, we have more rapes, we have more bad things happening ethically in our country. And you need to ask why, and then the reason would point to some of these technology which has data available with wrong things in their hands. And at this point, I want to ask this question. It is a best tool for the advancement of the gospel. Every people everywhere equipped with mobile phones. But where is the church? When this 100 million users joined this new mobile company, I felt the church stood naked in this particular technology. This is the greatest danger that the world can face, the church can face, when we are not prepared with the content and the resources that we have together. So I need you to ask that question while you're here, and maybe an answer which you can work out maybe in the group later. So that's my first point. The second point is the way in which relationships have grown in the past. You know, the societies have evolved from early civilization, from head to multiple subgroups, and then, get directions from there, industrial revolution. You all know this very well. And there is a hybrid system in which relationships are made, and then now it's more of a networked civilization. For us, it is crucial to ask this question, not the sequence in which the relationships are made, but how do we move in each of these networks, and how can we leverage it for the kingdom of God? So those kinds of questions will help a media group, as influencers who are sitting here, to make a difference to the mission of the church. So these networks, we know that politics, commerce, all are networked. And so we just need to realize, how can we add value to these networks? So I just want to point that question there. In our Indian village communities, this is how, Rudolf has pointed that, the storytelling model, where they sit under the tree, talk, air is the space, no control, everybody has the voice. Moved from there to the mass media system, which we now all know. But again, a revised version of that is the network media. But we think that we have this illusion that we get equal opportunity. Everybody can speak. But that is not true, because there are certain people controlling the network, the gateways. And so there are digital divides still exist. So we cannot say that democratization of media has happened and we have the control. No. But then the challenge for us is last month there are certain things have happened. In our city, the whole internet was closed down for 3 days. The reason was some guy uploaded some Muslim content on the Facebook. That has raised a great commotion in the society. The government has to shut down and nobody has access to information. Well, this is real. But we had a, what do you call this? Direct connection. I forgot. Yeah. Our institution had direct connection, so our network was working. We were saying we could communicate to our friends. What I'm trying to say is that we just tasted the danger of closing things down. The other thing that is happening in India is the government is scrutinizing everything that is on the net. Recently, two of our pastors in the sense, in the national sense, were arrested because what they preached on a Sunday morning was on the net. And the police immediately came and arrested them. So we need to take this control seriously and to think about, how do we take the message, cut across these controls and do something different. So I'm just leaving that question there. Then the third part, the impact that we want to put in together. We have the good news, but there is a problem with that good news, is that we have the message sitting separately, we have the media ministry silos separately, and then we have the people need somewhere else. In 1995, I took about 10 students from the Bible College and did a mission journey to the northwestern part of India, which is the desert part of India. Very tough. No churches. So we started visiting villages by villages. In the first village, I sent our students 2 by 2 to these houses. And when they came back, one of them, 2 people gave a beautiful testimony. Testimony is that they approached a house, a lady opened the door, and they introduced that, look, we are Christians, we came to share the love of Jesus Christ, and they told all of things. When they mentioned Christian, this lady began to show such a joy in their heart as well as in the face. She said, are you Christians? They said, yes. She said, I am seeing a Christian for the first time in my life. And then the boys asked them, why? She said, I've been listening to the radio every day about Jesus Christ. This story talked about the impact of one silo ministry there, but never connected to the church and the community. I really appreciate what all of you are doing together in for the kingdom, but there is a bigger purpose of collaboration is involved in. I started realizing the significance of collaboration because we got involved with this commentary project. To bring Indians together to write something is the hardest task in the world. But we managed to bring about 70 scholars, ask them to take a challenge. It took 7 years to complete it. Now the commentary is there for the people of God. But now out of that, there is something is also emerging. Suddenly these scholars started feeling that, look, our churches doesn't have discipleship material. So one seminary took the lead, started calling scholars, can you contribute to this course? And so I did bit from my New Testament side, others did from theology. Now it is online it is available for anybody, any church group to get access, and they get a proper degree from that. So small, but a collaborative effort to help strengthen the church. So coming together is an important principle. It's a Jesus model. Little flocks come together. We may have to think about social protection. We may have to think about media influencers, people with concepts and ideas and resources bring together that collaboration. I believe you all agree with that. And if you do that, say amen. Amen. So that's all my part of the story.